So, hello everybody. Today I was going to do a sit down, and now I actually can because the cat that has been occupying my chair since this morning has just moved. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the Hobbit Saga expansion for the Lord of the Rings LCG. I've now played through every single of the 6 scenarios, sometimes multiple times. And I have to say that I got it very early in my career as a Lord of the Rings LCG player, and I liked the idea of playing the real story of the Lord of the Rings or Lord of the Rings related stuff, because of course the LCG covers stuff that isn't really part and parcel of Lord of the Rings at all. But it does so in a really, really good way. But I kind of wanted to play the Saga expansions, and so the Hobbit was the first one that I got. And I think probably when I first unpacked it, the only other cards that I had were the cards from the base game. So I thought, okay, this is going to be fantastic. So I had all of the cards from the base game plus the cards from that expansion, and possibly also the cards from the Mirkwood cycle in there. And I built my decks according to the deck construction, or I should say I constructed my deck using the deck construction information on the back of the booklets to have a themed and kind of, contemporary decks. So decks that would contain the type of person that would have been part of the Hobbit stories, and so on and so forth. And I failed miserably. The trolls got me every single time. So then I constructed a different deck. Didn't work. I constructed many decks. It never worked. And I gave up. Then I continued to play. I played Khazad-dûm. I played parts of the Saga expansions for the Lord of the Rings, which you can also find on my channel. And I never looked back. I was very annoyed with it. Then the other day, I thought, okay, well, you should give this another try. So I went online and I found this really, really lovely dwarf deck. And I constructed it, and I basically played the first scenario 4 times, and I won 4 out of 4. I wouldn't say that I won easily, but I won confidently. And I was fascinated. So I was back in the game, as it were. So I decided, okay, I'm going to play through the whole 6 scenarios. And I think out of these scenarios, I won 1 outright, and the other ones I either didn't win or I had to cheat. And I don't like cheating, but at some point I just got so kind of exhausted mentally that I thought, okay, well, we're just going to adjust the gameplay slightly. So what do I think about it? Well, first of all, they try to bring in new mechanics, which I always applaud, because since it's a deck construction game where you draw from your own deck that you know very, very well because you constructed it yourself prior to playing, and from the encounter deck, there isn't a lot of variation you can bring in. There is no chaos bag, which, by the way, I hate with a vengeance. And there is also no die rolling like you would find it in the Harry Potter deck builder, which is, by the way, a brilliant game. So they're limited to using the cards. There is no other external material that they're bringing in. So how do you then bring in new mechanics? Well, you bring in new mechanics by repurposing cards. And they had used the what I call guessing game previously in Khazad-dûm, where you have to basically guess which card comes next. I think it's the first letter of the card that you're going to reveal from your deck, from your player card deck next, to basically do something in Khazad-dûm, and I can't remember what that was exactly, but basically it's guessing. So they kind of used this again when they did the riddling game with Gollum, and then again in the burglary scenarios, or in the burglary scenarios. That's the Lonely Mountain. And while I understand why they did it, it sucks. Why does it suck? Well, deck construction games distinguish themselves from deck builders in that they are strategic in nature. So basically you sit there with a huge pool of cards and you construct a deck between games to use strategically. In a deck builder, that'll always be tactical in nature, because when you set out, you don't even know which cards you're going to get at what moment in time, because you can only ever buy them from the tableau when they become available. And if you, for example, play Thunderstone Advanced, where they even have randomizers, you don't even know what kind of an offering there will be. So you don't even know what you will find from game to game. So they have to be tactical in nature. But a deck construction game has to be strategic. Now, if you randomize the game like they did in the riddling and in the burglary themed scenarios, to the degree that you have to guess what kind of card you're going to pull, and you have to guess, for example, its value and its sphere, or its sphere and its type, or its value and its type, you take away all strategizing from the player. And you also take away any tactical considerations from the player, because it's pure luck. You might just as well bring in the Chaos Bag from Arkham Horror LCG, which basically killed the game for me even before I entered the second scenario. And it killed the Hobbit for me as well. Because you have 50 cards in a tournament deck, so I play with 50 cards. You have to spend so much time thinking about which cards to bring in order to negotiate the event deck, the encounter deck that the game throws at you. And then you are forced to, first of all, discard cards, and sometimes rapidly so, and you have to guess what kind of a card you're going to get, and you can't use scrying, because you have to shuffle the deck every single time before you burgle or before you riddle. So it is really pure luck. And although I know my decks quite well, and the deck that I've been playing with was a deck that I was quite familiar with, I found it almost impossible to guess correctly. Sometimes I did guess correctly, but it was pure luck. And then in the burglar, in the riddling event, if you don't get the right answer, then Gollum attacks Bilbo, and he can only do this 3 times, and then Bilbo's dead, and then the game ends. So that's ridiculous. What they should have done is they should have said, okay, well, this is a strategic game, so we will force people to tableau build, to bring out cards like, attachments, allies, and then we're going to force them to make a decision which of these to sacrifice. So you draw a card from your player deck, and then you have to choose a card that is either like this or similar to it to a certain degree, maybe the same sphere or the same value or the same type. If it's an attachment, then you have to sacrifice an attachment from the tableau. If you can't, and if you don't have anything in your hand, then the riddle fails. So that really forces you to, first of all, construct a deck in such a way that you can do this. And secondly, it also makes for interesting choices. Which of these allies do I sacrifice? Do I need more questing power? Do I need more firepower? Because also, I would say that the event decks themselves were quite lackluster. They could have been a lot more varied to actually force the player into these tactical choices that come from strategic deck construction, and then having to decide which of the cards to sacrifice. That would have been a really, really good choice to make it really meaningful and to remove or to mitigate the luck factor. That's number one. Number two, they heavily relied on the idea that people would be playing multiplayer. Especially in the Battle of the Five Armies, when you end up with 3 different staging areas, there is simply no way as a single player you can do this. I reduced it and I said I'm going to just do 1 staging area at a time. Quest area and therefore staging area at a time. I think if I were to play it again, and I won't because I'm really done with it, maybe in a couple of years' time, but not now, I would probably say I randomize them and have to pick 2, because that would be difficult enough. But even with just the one, all of my heroes died and the game ended. So I think that they really dropped the ball on this one. I like a challenge as much as the next player, and I'm actually somebody who will not move on to the next adventure pack until such time as she has managed to win against the current one. But in this case, it was just boring, because there was no point. Because when you play a deck construction game, where you also invest a lot in player cards, because you have to buy the adventure packs and they come with player cards, and then you have this huge amount of player cards that you can choose from, and you really sit down and you construct a deck, and then all of the decisions that you have made in constructing the deck are negated by a completely random and not only once occurring random mechanic, but one that is recurring and is actually the fulcrum, as it were, of the storytelling. It just, takes away all the fun. That's not, if I wanted to play this, then I would probably play a completely randomized deck builder, which I don't, because I don't particularly like them. I've got Numenera, and I just find it totally lackluster. It could be because the theme itself I don't care about, but maybe if I played Thunderstone Advanced, one of the fantasy themed ones, I might like it better. I don't know. I was unable to obtain one. If you've got one that you want to give away and get rid of, just drop me a mail. We can maybe exchange addresses, and I can pay for shipping depending on where you ship from. But to be quite honest, if I want to play something completely random, I'm going to play Pathfinder CCG. That's what I'm going to... the PACG. So that's completely random. And it has no story, it has no meaning. Here they were trying to implement a story device like the riddling and the burglary. And I applaud them for that, because that's one thing that they did try to do. They did try to bring the story to life. And I think the theming of the cards, the imagery on the cards really brings the Hobbit to life. It is just these mechanics that make it uninteresting, because you lose the possibility of playing a deck construction game. I don't know if it was the same kind of people who thought, okay, well, we already messed up the Arkham Horror game, which could have been a good LCG, so we're just going to mess up the Lord of the Rings, because I can't recall the timing of the two. So maybe it was the same team that basically devised The Hobbit, and then, when they failed to do a good job there, they were told, okay, you can do the Arkham Horror game and mess that up. It could be. But I have to say that so far, of all of the expansions that I've played, and I've played a lot of the Saga expansions for the Lord of the Rings, I've played Khazad-dûm, I've played the Mirkwood Cycle, this one was the one that I found most frustrating. And it's a shame. They could have done better, and they decided not to. I sometimes felt like people who first get the beginner's box, or the basic box, the base game, and they then run into Dol Guldur, which of course is completely unwinnable with the cards that you have in the basic game. And even when you have a highly constructed deck, even the Great Glaurung, who I think is probably a deck constructor the best deck constructor bar none. I think he probably has tried out and figured out every single combination there is in the Lord of the Rings LCG. When he plays Dol Guldur, he kind of cheats, and he makes the decision which of his heroes is going to be imprisoned. He's not going to do it randomly, because he says it can't be done. So would I recommend The Hobbit? No, I wouldn't. And especially not if you only have the base game. If you want to do the Hobbit Saga expansion and enjoy it, you probably need a lot of experience, and you need plenty of player cards. At least Khazad-dûm, the full Mirkwood Cycle, and then possibly all of the other Saga expansions, so that you just have something to choose from. And whatever you do, don't go with the recommended decks, because they will not make it possible for you to play the game. So that's all from me. Hobbit Saga expansion is a no, if you want my advice. If you want to spend money on the Lord of the Rings LCG, don't go for this one, because it's not good. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.